here we are at the Hero's Word with our special guest, Jonboy Meyers, aka John, and what a great guy. He's taking the time to spend with us on the launch of his great new book, Teen Titans Rebirth, which just hit today, and it has been such an awesome book. Lots of people are working to it to bring it out, and I gotta say, the team put together a great book. So John, I want to ask you first and foremost, how excited were you when you got that first call from DC to be working on that book?
I was pretty excited, but they had already kind of talked to me about it a couple of months beforehand, and I wasn't their first choice, believe it or not. So, but it was really kind of weird because they hit me up during the summer, this past summer, and they were talking to me about it and talking to my agent about it, and I was still on Spawn at the time, and I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't too sure if it was something I wanted to do. And after Paul Jenkins, the writer, had actually departed, I stayed on the issues more, and DC asked again. And I flew up there and talked and met with the execs, and I was like, okay, cool. All right. Like, so what is this actually about, and what is my involvement? And like, well, this is what we want you to do. This is what it's going to be about. Until you commit, we can't tell you the full scope of what this thing is and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, cool. So at that point, I decided to leave Spawn and say, okay, well, I'm going to develop this Titans thing. And Todd was as cool about it, as cool as he could be, because Todd's a great guy. And I guess the thing about it is with Spawn, you only have one character, and it's, you know what I mean? And it's you're kind of limited. And I know you can have a very long, prosperous run on one character, but for me, I'm kind of like, I have so many stories I want to tell and so many things I want to work on, and DC is a much bigger backyard and bigger universe to play with, and it gets me one step closer to Batman. So
that is so true. And who doesn't want to play in the Bat universe? And you've got Damian Wayne, who is like, you don't get any closer to that.
Well, unless you're working on Batman,
well,
and then that is you're there. So, but working on Damian's great. I love that character. I didn't initially like him. I know he's a really polarizing character. When Morrison wrote him, I think it was just his kind of like FU letter a little bit to the idea of Robin, because people were such in love with the idea of Robin that he wanted to do something different, which he totally reinvented it. But I'm more of a fan of the Patrick Gleason version, where he is kind of like this kind of reformed kid, and along with the off the top of my head now, I can't remember what it is, but he's basically like redeemed himself of his sin. So he's kind of like clean. So he's starting on a new slate. I know a lot of people are a little upset because he starts on this new slate, and what is the first thing he does? He goes out and kidnaps a new team, which is kind of like
that's actually one of the cool things I liked about the book, because upon reading the first issue of Titans, I liked the fact that you had referenced the Gleason run, and if you remember in that one, the first thing he did was he tried to prove himself to the other Robins by taking them out. So right away I thought that's a really cool connection. And of course they, Beast Boy mentioning that Tim Drake is down. I just felt the book had a lot of cool emotional ties in there that really brought out the character. And I thought this is a great starting point for the Titans, and especially for people who haven't read the book. And I think it's just a fantastic way to go. So when they approached you, you said it took you a little while to choose to go on that book. Was there a character that made you step up to taking it, or are you going to be able to bring somebody onto the Titans that we haven't seen before?
Oh, man. I think they've already kind of stunted the fact that there's a sixth member, and like Dan DiDio already kind of announced it already at Long Beach, so I guess I don't know what the etiquette is for stuff like this. Like, do we talk about it or do we not? But like, there is a sixth member that's going to be introduced who plays a larger role. I don't know how much I'll be involved with that though coming up, but let's rewind a little bit back to Rebirth, and the things that you like about Rebirth, and I think the reason why it works so well is because and of course this is inside baseball stuff, so we're getting the scoop here.
Nice.
Jeff Johns was really the architect behind Teen Titans Rebirth. It was the base idea, I think, and all that stuff that he did was work between himself and the editor Alex Antone and Ben Percy, and it was basically like Jeff's guiding hand through that whole thing. So I think the reason why it works well and reads well is because Jeff had such strong involvement in it, which, you know, it turned out to be a really great thing because people were really responding to it, which is good because people are like, this is the greatest Titan stuff in a while. And for me, like like a good buddy of mine worked on the new 52 one, Brett Booth, and I liked Brett's stuff too. I really enjoyed it, but I think what's the word I'm trying to look for? I guess when you're trying to develop something and create something, you know, you want to try to tie it to things that actually are familiar, like things like the Wolfman Perez run and the Jeff John runs were staples of inspiration. Whereas a new 52, they're like, you know, we kind of want to go in a different direction and do something new and exciting. And honestly, for me, like when Scott Lobdell and Brett did that, I mean, it's kudos to those guys, because you have this giant wave of expectation that you're surfing against, and you're doing something that's kind of bucking the trend of that, because you're like, hey, we just want to try something new here. And I think that's what the new 52 was about, is trying something different.
And as a retailer, the new 52 did great things. It brought new readers in, and especially that particular run. Like, I love Booth's art on that, and especially the relationship that we saw with Wonder Girl and Superboy. You know, they were trying to make these characters new and fresh. But you did mention Jeff Johns has really brought a lot of these titles back to the core, and it's really resonating with long-term fans, and it's just written well enough that those people coming in new can really say, I get the core of these characters. So again, really, really good on both fronts. I think the new 52 run brought in new readers, and Rebirth is kind of bringing people back. So let's talk a little bit about some of your background in comics. You mentioned you worked with Todd McFarlane, and I must say, like, being on a book like Spawn and being able to work with a master like McFarlane, it must have been really fun, and also a great learning experience too.
It was a lot of fun. I think I really didn't have a lot of time to really sit and think about it, because like we're like, okay, well, we have work to do, and this is what we need to do. We're rebooting this character. We're bringing Al Simmons back, and trying to loop in the right writer for it. And it was all these things that came into play that it just didn't really like sink in, that it's like, oh, this is Todd and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not one to really get starstruck anyway, but I mean, it's just what Todd has done for the industry, whether good or bad or indifferent or whatever people feel. Like he's been one of those guys who helped, like it or hate it, you know, he elevated comics to a point where he brought it more mainstream, and he's one of those guys that it's the industry owes a lot to him, and I was really, really thankful to be able to work on it with him. So, well, as
a founder of Image, he did change the comic world and look at the legacy, and the fact that Spawn's still going is amazing. So again, to be part of that is, I think, probably very, very cool. And I did really enjoy your art on that run. I gotta say, for myself personally, I noticed your stuff in the World of Warcraft trading card game and a lot of the World of Warcraft card stuff. And from there, it was instantly hooked. So you've also done a little bit of work in the video game industry for years. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. When you're working as a freelance artist, you wear many hats, and it's always about like, hey, you know what? Like, I want, you kind of have a tendency to overbook yourself just because, like, you want to make money. You're going to have your feast and famine periods. So it's like, I'm going to make as much money as I can and sit on it for as long as I can, because you never know when these lean times will come. But I first started off in comics, and then slowly moved into illustration and trading cards and animation and things like that. And and of course into games. And games is something that I have a passion about too. And I started off doing a lot of stuff with Sony. And then that grew into getting our own game, which was Motorstorm Apocalypse, which was a cool race game that we did no one was really doing it that much at the time. We actually pushed it where it's like we cut up comics and made them like it kind of reads like bad animation, but it's kind of like this in between comics and animation that people are just now doing now with motion graphics, and you see a lot of things now moving and atmosphere now and a lot of stuff. Like our team, I feel like our team really kind of pushed that and pioneered it a little bit. There's a lot of like I think it's called paradoxing or something like that, or parallaxing.
Yeah.
And we try to push a lot of that, and great game. And then the tsunami hit in Japan, and our parent company is of course Sony, and they are of course located in Japan. And with an earthquake in the game, the center is around an earthquake in a major metropolitan city that destroys the city, and it can't never come back. We're like, oh, so they killed the game.
Yeah.
Kind of, they just did it and released it, and we're like, oh. But years and years later, well, not years and years, a couple of years later, I actually ended up at a company called Riot Games working on League of Legends. I did that about, it seems like forever, but I think maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, 2 years and change, something like that. So doing stuff for that, doing like CG designs and trying to help them build out the brand a little bit more. So, and trying to get them like, hey guys, you need to make more than one game.
And now look at them, right? So
I don't think, yeah, I think they're developing more games. I don't know. I hope they do more, because I've got a lot of friends there, and I like to see that company keep going.
Keep going strong. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, you said you like games, and obviously you like comics.
Yes.
What do you do in your downtime? Like you're not drawing 24/7. So what are you doing in your downtime?
Actually, I am drawing 24/7.
Okay.
Like Titans is, or it was, a very demanding schedule. It just, because there's so many rewrites that happen and tweaks that are going on, and sometimes it's what's the term like in games they use is building a plane while you're trying to fly it, which sometimes is not necessarily a good thing. Yeah, you're like, okay, we're gonna fly this plane. You're like, dude, you don't have any wings on it. It's just gonna crash. So there's a lot of like things that have to happen, and my days usually involve with, of course, promoting. Like now, it's been promoting the book, and I've been on this Real World one thing where I've done podcasts and flying out to LA and doing interviews and stuff like that. And I really want to get the word out on Titans and let people know what a passionate book like it means to me to be able to be part of this and to have it released and do well. So today's been a calm day though. It's been like, today's a Twitter day for me, so I get to talk to people on Twitter a little bit and interact with people and hear people's questions and concerns. And a lot of people super passionate about, like I said, really great input about the book. I'm like a little taken back. I'm like, there's nothing constructive for us that you guys want to see. Like, what are we doing wrong here? What's like, you want the writing to be better? What's going on with the characterization? And like, I know people are just seeing this glimpse of it, and it's like, when you boil it down, there's really not much story here. It's like Robin grabbing these people, and we're just experiencing a moment in time for these kids' lives up until they're abducted. So people are like, okay, we kind of know who these characters are, but like, what's Robin about now? So the next arc is going to be about like why Robin brought them there, and we're setting up this really big threat. And they've already talked about this, so we can let this happen. There's this threat called the Demon's Fist, and we're initially developing this. We wanted to do something where the Titans had a protagonist, and not just a single character guy, because like Ra's al Ghul is kind of a Batman villain, and we want to keep him that way in a sense that he just wants Damian back as an heir, And if he can't have if Damian doesn't come back, then it's like, well, I can't have you, no one can have you, so we're going to kill you. But he sends these people called the Demon's Fist, and the Demon's Fist is basically a group of superpowered kids who have actually been abducted since birth and trained to be assassins to ascend to the link. They're supposed to be the right hand of Ra's al Ghul. So, like, if anything needs to be done or anybody needs to be killed, like, or taken care of, these guys are the guys who do that. And these guys are supposed to be the personal guard to the next heir to the Ra's al Ghul thing. So whoever's leading the Demon's Fist, initially that's what it's set up to be. So I'm telling you this now, and it probably will change because that's how comics are, they change. So, and we have a character leading them right now who's very close to Damian, who is actually more Damian than Damian. So she's a pretty hardcore character. She's everything that if Damian never got with Batman, Damian would have turned into. But,
wow. So no name drops. We gotta wait till issue 2 or 3 for that, right?
Well, yes. All I could tell you is, like, the Rite of Ascension within the Al Ghul's is always family centered, and it's always been a family thing, and Teen Titans is a family book. So you'll have the Batman family, you'll have the Ra's al Ghul family, and of course you'll have Teen Titans having their own family. So lots of inner turmoil going on for Damian Wayne there. So it'll be interesting how it plays out.
Very, very cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about comics. You mentioned the Titans and their legacy.
Yes.
And I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. So, Deathstroke the Terminator, big Titans classic guy, and we know he also has a daughter, Rose. So, are we going to see any of these legacy Titan characters in the run of the book?
I don't know. Like, I don't really have that big of a say sometimes when it comes to story, usually, and things like that. I kind of actually have to fight tooth and nail to be heard. So it's more about like what Ben and Alex, Anton, the editor, want to do with it. So if there's something you guys want to see, bug those guys and say, hey, what about this? What about that? And I know Damian Wayne's going to be showing up in Deathstroke. So and which is written by Christopher Priest and drawn by Joe Bennett. I think inked by Mark Morales, I think, and a couple other dudes. But if I'm wrong on that, guys, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just one dude. I don't know everything. But I'm sure the Titans have a long history with Deathstroke. It would make sense for those two to cross over at some point in some capacity. So.
All right, very cool. And on the subject of Damian Wayne, we know that you mentioned he is the heir to the Al Ghul legacy. He is the son of the Dark Knight, but his grandfather is Ra's al Ghul. So he is a pretty determined and strong, an amazing fighter. So in your opinion, if he was to go up against, say, a Marvel counterpart in the form of the new Miles Morales Spider-Man, who do you think would win that fight?
It would probably have to be Damian. And I say this and preface it for the fact that, like, I love Miles, and Miles is a great character, but Miles is pretty green. You've got a character who's been training since the age of 3 to kill people and has killed people and plays dirty, so... and has basically, like, he doesn't need Bruce Wayne's money. Damian has his own fortune. Like, he's Oprah rich himself. You know what I'm saying? So he doesn't really need Bruce's money. He has means himself. So when you have a guy like that, it's really kind of hard when you're stacking up like someone like Miles, who has all these great attributes going for him. But I mean, it's just like, hey, I've got infrared now. I can see you. I've got these little gadgets. Boom, I can do this. I can kill you without looking at you. It's all these things that the kid's an assassin. He's a killer. He's a trained killer, and he's trying to reform from that. So I would have to say, like, Miles Morales. Miles, I love you, buddy, but hey, probably be a very, very short fight.
I totally agree with that assessment.
He took out all the Robins. He took out all the Robins, and you see here, he took out all the Teen Titans. I mean, how easy was it to take out Starfire? You're just like, boop, like, like.
I think my personal favorite was when he took out Kid Flash just with the gas dummy. Brilliant, it was just pretty simple. So that was very, very great.
And Jeff, and they're very, very clever guys.
So I just want to close up here and tell you my favorite part of the book. Was literally the last panel where we got to see the reveal that it was Robin, it was Damian, and Goliath was in the background. Are we going to see him a little bit more in this series?
I think the way it's plotted out and the way we plotted it out, Goliath is in there and doing stuff, but he's not officially a member. So he's more of, I don't know how they're handling them, to be honest with you. Like, for me, he's a character. But I don't know honestly how Ben and Alex see him. So that's something that's really up to them. But I liked including Goliath because Goliath he's Chewbacca to Damian's Han Solo.
Right on.
And he's a character where he speaks to Damian, but Damian's the only person who can understand him. So it's that thing that you have this kind of tortured kid and a little bit of a damaged kid who's best friend is a creature that only he can understand, which is really great. And it's kind of nice to see that interplay because, it kind of gives Damian that extra boost of confidence when he's talking to people. It's like, well, and honestly, that was intentional on my part. It wasn't written in the script, but having this character in here and having Goliath have his back, so to speak, it kind of gives him that confidence a little bit more to trash talk a little bit. It's like, hey, I can take you guys. It's like, you know what I mean? It's that you have this little kid with a huge ego and who's trying to redeem himself, but also he's trying to puff his chest out a little bit and trying to
Well, yeah, he's got a tough act. He's following his father, who's Batman, so he's got to make sure people know who he is and that he stands on his own, but while proving himself. So that's a tough place to be for an adolescent, a teenager, right?
Yeah, it is. The thing that you got to keep in mind, though, is just and hopefully, this is something I really hope the team follows through on, is just Damian is learning that he doesn't want to be that type of Batman, because he's starting to understand, if you accept the way of Batman, it's a very lonely place. We open up with Rebirth, and you see this kid standing in front of a birthday cake, and he turns 13, and his dad's not there. And that's the subtext that people probably aren't really picking up on, and it's something that we pick up on issue 1 on the ongoing. It's just dude, when you turn 13, that's kind of a big deal. And we're trying to say within the league, even in Arabic culture, turning 13 is and Damian is Arabic, if you guys don't know. So, but it's not. It is a big deal, but not a huge deal. But but we're trying to say within league culture, and turning 13 is when you're kind of acknowledging where you're a man, and it's a change now. It's where you're stepping in this greater role, where you're assuming more responsibilities now, and a lot more is expected because you're no longer a kid. The childish things that you could get away with are no longer tolerated. So he's at this really weird point now where he turns 13, and it's obviously this big deal for him. But Batman's nowhere to be found. Apparently no one is there. And it's kind of well, how would you feel if you're a kid and you turn 13, it's a big deal and your dad's not there, or people he love's not there? And it's kind of sucks, man.
Yeah.
So I think he's learning he's got to look at it through this lens of he's learning if I'm gonna be Batman, being Batman, that type of Batman, I have to have tragedy in my life, and he really doesn't have any tragedy. He really doesn't. He's gone on these trials, but he's learning if he's gonna be Batman and walk into this mantle, it's got to be on his own terms, because if not, he can go back to the league where he's worshipped and beloved and all this stuff, but he has to be a bad person. So this kid is kind of caught between two worlds. It's I can have the love of a family and support, because he had his mother, even though she tried to kill him, at its core, she loves him. If you read that very first arc, she loves her son, and Raish loves his grandson, but the fact is, it's just how they want to make a difference on the world. They want to kill people and they want to control people. And Damon's what? His mom says, go spend some time with your dad, figure things out for yourself. What type of man do you want to be? You're an heir to these two legacies. And it's either, do you want to step in the role of Batman, or do you want to follow us in the family business and be an Al Ghul? But his mother, when she initially sent him away, I think she wanted him, and I don't know if Morrison understood that or not, but she wanted him to step into a greater role and have a choice, because she never really had a choice. I mean, she's born into it. There's nowhere else for her to go. Damian has a choice, So.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the bizarre family dynamic that the Batman Talia Al Ghul relationship is, and but definitely one of those great backbones. And I think you really hit a good nerve there, and I hope that translates and resonates with the younger fans, because maybe Damian will find that he needs the family, and the Titans will kind of become that for him, because like you said, the Titans are all about family and stuff. So very, very cool. Well, listen, Jonboy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I think your book is great. I think the team Ben Percy and your colorist and everybody who collaborated on this should be very proud of it. And I just want to sign off. I want you to tell the people out there who are listening to this, where can they find information about you online?
Myself is, you can always Google me, Jonboy Meyers, or go to my site, jonboymeyers.com, Facebook, Twitter, Jonboy Meyers on Facebook, Art of Jonboy Meyers on Facebook, Jonboy007007 on Instagram, and on, what is that, Twitter? Of course, my teammates, big ups to Jeff Johns, Ben Percy, for the story, Corey Breen on lettering, Jim Charlampitis, amazing colors, Alex Antone on editor, and Brittany Holzer. Sorry, Brayden, if I get your last name wrong, as our associate editor, and of course Marie Javins, who's our group editor. Like, everybody worked really, really hard on this, and we're so very happy that people like it and are responding well to it. So thank you very much.
Well, I can't wait for more. So thanks for tuning in. This is Andre from The Hero's Word. Please give a big thank you to Jonboy. Hit him up on Twitter, also Instagram. If you haven't checked out his art, I know you're going to love it. Follow this guy because maybe he's going to get that Batman and make that dream come true. I'm Andre, and that's The Hero's Word.